Hi guys, my name is Arun Tyagi. Let's continue our learning journey. So we actually already discussed about creational pattern. Now let's jump into some structural patterns. So these patterns mostly help us, in basically code, how to organize the code so that you can reuse as much as possible, and also you can, how to utilize your old code with maybe some new layers and all. Let's start with the very basic one. We call it an adapter pattern, like name suggesting, right? It should be able to adapt which may be not a directly fit for that particular code. Okay, let's start with the official definition of it. So adapter pattern is a software design pattern that allows the interface of an existing class to be used as another interface. It is often used to make existing class work with others without modifying their source. Now, what does that mean? So, you have an existing class, and you are basically you want to use it on a new maybe with a new client, where client is actually expecting something else. Maybe your class is having fields like name, age, average, and all, but your new client maybe want name and age as concatenated strings. So in those cases, one way is you modify or you recreate the classes which client can use. But here this adapter pattern will help you that without modifying the existing code, you can actually write an adapter in between, which will help you utilizing the existing code with the newer type of clients. To discuss this in further, let's talk about a scenario, and if whoever is working on the, as a full stack developer or working on UI, they may have seen, right, like often this happens like when you have your clients like your iOS app or Android app or a web platform. Then for the same screen, maybe you have a home screen, for example. For home screen, iOS will have a slightly different data than your Android phone, and your web will have entirely different data. Reason behind that obviously is your laptop, your web landscape is very big, so you can show more details on that page. But whereas on Android mobile app or iOS mobile app, you will show some consolidated, only relevant or very important information, right? So let's just same thing, let me try to showcase by this picture. So on for example, this is, I'm talking about, if you are seeing any profile screen, profile of a sports person, for example. So on an iOS, maybe you will show a picture of the player, then the name of the player, then the specialty of that player, then you will have some what is his strike rate or average runs, right, or wickets, and some other details. And maybe in Android you will have some extra information as well, whereas on iOS you will have these similar details, but something will be different. For example, here if you are showing average, the maximum you will show is 2 decimal place, like 10.28 only, whereas on Android maybe you can show 3, because maybe iOS is having the width is smaller than Android phone, right? And here also, if your phone is smaller, then you want here one less information than Android. Whereas on your web, maybe you will show, lot of pics, or maybe you have a slideshow here where if you will click next, then you will be able to see next pictures and all, then basic info in this style and more images, right? Many details. So obviously on your web you can have multiple details. So if you want to achieve something like this and your data source is always same, how you will do that? Let's see it from client perspective first, that what client want. For example, if I'm having an iOS client, right, what it will do is it will call a manager that just give me players details. So here to explain it clearly, I'm basically calling function like get player for iOS, get player for Android, and this is player ID. whereas I can simply have get player, and obviously device type you will send, and on basis of device type your basically your classes will identify which information I should send back to this client, right? So client will simply call give me a player detail with the player ID is this. Now how manager can do is, manager means someone in between who is supposed to call the data source to return the data. So obviously we can have only one function called get player, where you will pass the ID and device type, and on basis of device type you will call which adapter you need to call, right? Here for simplification I basically created three separate functions. That manager is having get player for web, get player for Android, get player for iOS, and to pass these different types of entity we actually created three different adapters. Now what is this adapter? Let's jump into adapter directly. So what adapter is having is, so before I show this adapter to you, let's see what our data source is having. Data source is someone who this code, assume that this code is already written, and here obviously for example for explaining I took a very simple example, but in your real projects this code is supposed to be a heavy complex code, and you don't want to modify it, and modifying it maybe some other old clients are using it as it is, so you won't be able to modify it. So you only have two choices: either write a new data source which will have data as per client requirement, or you will have basically something like this, an adapter in between. So existing code is something like this, where it is for every player it is providing these 8 properties, right? And it is having basically this is the definition of the player according to this, and whenever you will call it will give this entire detail, and assume here a very complex code which is returning running that functionality. Now rather than exposing this directly to my client, what I did is I wrote some adapters in between. Now I am having adapter as per my client. So for my iOS client, what I did is I defined that whenever iOS is requesting for the player, I will only return these things: name, age, picture, average score, and ID. Whereas this is just basically the interface, and this is the implementation of that interface, that what I will do here is, right? So same thing I will do for Android, and same thing I will do for web also. So if you see what is the difference is, basically here I am defining that maybe my name is this, but here if when I am returning a name, I can chop it to 10 characters only. For example, get average score, so I am always converting it into this format, that return only up to 2 decimal places. For Android I can change it to, like here I did only 1 decimal place, right? I can do it like always return 3 decimal places. Whereas for web I'm actually not at all returning average score. What I'm doing is I'm giving you all the innings, the entire data, and you can compute on your side, and also you can show all in the list, that top 10, last 10 innings which he played, and blah blah blah. So that entire thing. So if you see here, I'm returning that entire list of his recent innings, or returning only 10. So this is what basically an adapter can do. It will use the existing code, convert it into what my client is expecting, and then simply returning that. So this is as simple as that, but this is very useful, and I have seen so if you think of a very complex architecture where maybe you want to run different domain logics, and ultimately you want to have same code, you can actually use adapters. You can add adapters for something like that. Yep. So this is your adapter pattern. Very simple, but once you will use it, you will see that this is very useful, and I'm sure on all the projects we are actually always we are having this to run a complex project for a very longer run. Yep. Thank you very much. yeah, next I think we'll move to bridge pattern and composite pattern. That's it in this one. Thank you very much, guys. Have a nice day.